Hey everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I'm finished with this altered book project and I wanted to show you how it turned out. As you can see by the spine and the name of the book, it went in a direction that I totally was not expecting. This book started out as a vintage encyclopedia. It's an encyclopedia on the smaller side. It's about 5.5 by 8 inches. If you go back and look at my first video, you will see where I just tore pages out without measuring or thinking ahead too much. When you're choosing a book to alter and tear pages out of, it's important to have a book that allows you to tear pages out without damaging the original binding too much. These pages were put in such a way that a page could be torn out and it didn't also tear out another page from another part of the book. And I think you know what I mean. If a page opens up and is stitched and it's not really glued all the way down, you pull one side, the other side, wherever it is in the book, is going to tear away as well. So if you decide to alter a book like this, just be aware of that sort of thing. This book is old. It was published in 1961, I believe. So, 60 years old. Things like this get dry. The pages can become brittle, crinkly, that kind of thing. As I was working on the book, opening and closing and doing things to the pages, at some point, this part of the book that covers the spine, the binding, this piece here, it just cracked away on each side and fell off. I loved the way it looked. I didn't expect to like the look so much. I started to glue it back into place and then I thought, no, I'm not gonna do that. I did put a layer of white glue before I added this title, and I just kind of rubbed it in with a paper towel to take off the excess, but also to maybe strengthen it a little bit. I did have to put some glue under these edges, here at the bottom and at the top. Now that I'm done with it, it's not going to be manipulated anymore, so I'm hoping that it will stay like it is for, a number of years to come. This is a book that I would put on display. Yes, I would pull it out and look at it. It's a piece of art. It's meant to be enjoyed. Even just seeing it like this is really pretty. So let's look on the inside. I didn't expect it to turn into butterflies or everything. This edition, as far as being an encyclopedia goes, covered a lot of E words, and then it went into a few words that started with the letter F. You can see it kind of ends with FA back here. And I was lucky enough to get this beautiful page with the capital F on it, and I definitely left that in place. Yesterday while I was out, I was looking at some art supplies and I was just, falling in love with some of the butterfly stamps and thinking, oh, I want one of everything. And I just said in my mind, butterflies are everything. And then I thought, how like whimsically fun is that? Butterflies are not everything, family, health, friends, all of that that's everything, but butterflies are just everything. So I decided to make that the title of the book. You can see I added a butterfly to the front, and then let's just flip through. I pulled this back. The number had already been glued into place, so I just tore it back a little bit and tucked this large blue butterfly underneath. I've added a tiny butterfly sticker here. I added a butterfly here. A lot of these butterflies are going to be die cuts that I bought from the Dollar Tree. When they get those in stock, I try to go ahead and buy a few packs because they don't have them all the time. I ended up, as I was going through this book, tearing out more and more pages. Sometimes it would be a page that I had already taped something onto or glued something onto. I didn't worry about that. I don't feel bad about that. I didn't want the book to be such a gaping gator mouth. I felt it was necessary to keep tearing pages out so that I ended up with something that was relatively flat. What I did with the pages that I tore out after the original tearing out of pages, I laid them to the side because some of them had images that I wanted to tear out and then glue in. I do that regularly, just going back and adding layers. I may go completely through a book, doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then start all over at the beginning and add another layer to a lot of the pages. And I think it helps to tie everything together, like going back through and gluing in images on top of the layers that have already been done. You can see I added a butterfly to this page. I added one to this page, and Einstein has got a tiny little butterfly in his hair. There's a butterfly sticker. I did have to put some glue behind that. It didn't really want to stick. There's a little butterfly stamp there. Well, it's a sticker. It's cut out in the shape of a postage stamp. I ended up on the couch one night. Jason had a gig and I did not go. It was a really late night for him. And I pulled a TV tray close to the couch, put all of my pens and watercolors that I use for my planner. I had those close by, so I just pulled them out and I started sketching little vines and flowers throughout the book. I love the way this turned out. It was just a fun, no stress, no pressure kind of doodling. I love these R2 rollerball pens that fade a little bit with water, and I can just show you here the way I did some of these flowers. Nothing fancy. Oops, I'm kind of poking through the paper there. Uh-oh, sorry about that, T.S. Eliot. And that's okay, I do not worry about things like that. This is kind of a delicate one page that ended up glued between a lot of other pages. And I did talk about that in a previous video. So then I would just, you know, put some color here. And when you take a little bit of water, the ink runs and the color runs, and you just end up with kind of a messy little rose. And you can go back and add different colors. You know, you can keep adding layers like that. So that's the way I did that. The vines are very similar, you know, just a very simple little leaf. Take a color of green, don't have to be fancy. I mean, you could leave it like that. I like that, just that touch of color, but then you can see when you add the water how that looks. So let's see, I added another butterfly here. Here is an image that I didn't want to lose when I was tearing out pages for the second and third and fourth time around. I wrote William Shakespeare under that. I didn't want to lose the information. I did the same thing over here with these. I just kind of scribbled in the names under there. I thought that added some texture and more interest. This is a really thick page because it's multiple pages that are glued together. I added a wax seal here over the corner where some of these things were kind of coming together at an intersection. There's part of a piece of tea bag that I had used. You might remember this, I don't turn easy. This page doesn't turn easy. This is T.S. Eliot, who was a friend of Virginia Woolf, and I wrote over here, but I'm not afraid of Virginia Woolf. You can see I glued a butterfly here. It was a very large one, so I just cut it to fit on the page the way I wanted it to. I added a butterfly here, more of the little drawings that I was doing that night on the couch. And just don't be afraid to take, like I have these Neocolor 2s that I really like. You can use a number of different watercolor crayons or watercolor pans and some water and just, you know, get color on the page. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And then I don't always worry, it depends on where the water's gonna land, but I don't worry too much about closing pages on each other. You know, in this case, it's really light. I didn't add a lot of color, but we could have ended up with different splotches over here that would add more interest to this page. And it feels really random and organic when you do things like that. There's another picture I didn't want to lose, Charles Dickens, and in this case, I left the writing that the book had as far as his name. There's a butterfly. This is the window that I cut out for a different project, and I didn't like the way it was laying on top of the images, so I did it a second time, and I said I'll keep the first one because we will use it somewhere else, and this is where I ended up using it. More of the little flowers scribbled everywhere. There's a butterfly here. We have a pocket in case we want to use it. I just glued an image, slid it down in there, and then glued it into place. So this image doesn't slide in and out, but we do have room to do something like that if we want to. These are some offcuts from some paper that I was using for a project. And, you know, for instance, if I wanted to keep samples of these, you can tell I glued one here, but we could slide these down in here. You know, it can be anything like that. It just really adds interest. And you could add even more kind of quirky interest by doing something like sample 1, sample 2, and sample 3. You could really take your time and, you know, stamp that on there or glue letters on there and make it look really industrial. That's just a little sketch I did while sitting on the couch. I love William Butler Yeats's glasses, and I went ahead and enhanced those with a marker. I thought about putting a hat on George Bernard Shaw. I might still do that. I don't know. Actually, that was just too good not to do. So I've put a hat on George Bernard Shaw, and I put the initials WBY, like maybe he's thinking about William Butler Yeats. I love doing things like that, and you can keep adding layer after layer. To me, every time I go back through a book the second time or the third time, I think of something that feels like it ties in, and it will kind of change the direction of the book, and yet everything ties together. This is just a little tag that I put some ink on, and I stamped the letter D. Even though I was looking at this page that said E, I was thinking I was in the D's, but I had so many of these books pulled out, and I decided just to leave it right there. Here's some of that transparent, the beautiful vellum. I wrote with a Sharpie, the tulip is a lovely flower. And here's just some more of that scribbling, another large butterfly. There's part of a slide that the transparency part has been taken out of. And I glued part of the tab from, where did we put it? Oh, right here in front of me, from this envelope, part of the tab. It was really pretty, so I just put it under here. It's actually had the theme of like a vineyard, and it's just a really pretty old look. So then moving through here, there's part of that envelope. You can really see it here. I glued it completely to the page. I didn't care for it to be interactive. The flap is glued down. I glued this side down, but I left this part open. And there's an old photograph I found while I was out thrifting, and I just cut it down, stitched around the edge, and put some of this really pretty trim in between the two parts of the picture, and that just sits in there. Of course, we have Frida Kahlo. That's from some beautiful paper that I bought at Paper Source. A butterfly. And then here's just another little sketch. She's got her big hair bun, but then I kind of sketched a little ribbon around and put a big flower on it. Things like that are so much fun. I did this the second time around, so she didn't have that flower to start with. I love the maps. I decided to keep that page just like it is. I may go back and add some text or something. And if you have these really large butterfly die cuts, and those packs from the Dollar Tree do have some really large ones, don't be afraid to cut them in half. And, you know, you can go back and draw in the antennae or antenna if it's just one side. And another butterfly here. You can see that's part of a page that I tore out, and it already had something glued on it. So I ended up taping it here. There's butterfly on top. I love this page. I definitely just fell in love with this page that says the New York Times. Of course, it's an article about England and things going on in Europe. Sketched some flowers on top of that, which I think it just turned out really pretty with all of this typeset the different fonts up here. And you can see this wing would have been hanging over the page, but I just trimmed it to be even with the page. I really didn't want anything in this book sticking out, since it's going to be on display and people will be picking it up and looking at it. And if you have a place like here, for some reason, this is really rippling along this page, almost to the point that I'm worried about it tearing. Just put some tape in there. It does nothing but add interest and make the page stronger. Anything that starts to tear or whatever, don't be afraid to repair it. It's kind of like a sign of life, like someone was here, and that's what really makes a project interesting to me. So there's another little sketch. I like this flower here or whatever, Pearly Everlasting. I'm not familiar with that. Okay, it says over here that everlastings, that's a name given to various plants which change little in appearance on drying and may be kept for months or even years without diminution in beauty. So that's interesting. Here's another butterfly on the map, and in the center of these pages, I just folded this piece of vellum and glued it into place. And then even later, you can tell I decided to tear more pages out here. To tear these out, what I did was put a straight edge in. I didn't use this. I used one that was actually flat, but I held it into place and tore on the outside of that so that I didn't mess up where this was glued in. So here we have, you know, even the interest of that torn page there. And the same on this side. You can see actually there where it's glued. And another butterfly. I love this page. I think this is one of my favorites. I just sat there on the couch, you know, scribbling and doodling and making these little whimsical buildings. They're very, very simple. To get some of the color, I used whites and maybe the tiniest bit of black, not very much. Inside the house, I have a crayon that's gray. So I did use the gray one more than anything. And some of this dark color came from, you know, the ink itself when you run the paintbrush over it. And I thought it was cool to put windows over the parts of the page where there was imagery in the background, and then it's kind of like you're looking through a window. The last thing was to go in and just draw these vines and flowers into place. And there's a butterfly sort of right in the center of that. And this is a sticker that came from some ancestry type crafting things that I found. What did you think you would be when you grew up? I put a butterfly. And we could add another layer to this. We could add a postage stamp. We could add an ink stamp. You could scribble. You could get out your acrylic paint and do marks all over the page. There are so many layers that could be put on this book even now. I love this page too. She looks like she's sort of dancing in the wind and holding on to this little dot of glue there from the butterfly. But kind of holding on to this. We could put words on this. The falconry image came from a different page. I didn't want to lose that, so I just cut the corner out, or tore the corner out and glued that into place. And then here is an idea. If you have something that you really want to write and get out of your system, but you don't necessarily want to have it like just glaring at everybody from a book like this or on your channel or whatever. This was a full page of writing, and when I was done with it, I went over it with a wet paint brush. I did use the R2 pen to write it out because I wanted it to fade. While the page was still damp, not completely dry, I tore it into pieces and then glued those pieces into the book. So you can see little bits. Another day to try, do my best. Here it says things, limiting, food choice, being a light, grab hold of, your business, and make it so you're getting different pieces of a full page. So that is one way to use a journal entry that feels too private, but you don't want to completely throw it in the trash can. And then here at the back, I love this. So I just love the way that turned out. I put some little flowers at the top and the bottom. I did use an R2, but occasionally at the Dollar Tree, you can find them in different colors. This was a pink R2 roller ball pen. And I used a white gel pen to add some color in the center. For here, the last thing I'm gonna do, in fact, I decided just to go ahead and do that. And I put my tags in by using some sort of fabric. I mean, this is a little heavier than what I normally use, but I felt like it would be good to have that here since I was gluing it into place and not sewing it. And I just use my little letter stamps to stamp birdsong on the fabric. And then back here at the back, there's not been really much change at all from the very beginning. We have the key under the brad. The brads have been covered up with the fabric. So that's where this stands at this point in time. I may add some more layers. In fact, one of the pages I tore out is this page of all of these English poets, which I absolutely love. English poets and writers. So we shall see. I could, you know, find a way to put these in, because to me, like, poetry and butterflies, they go together, don't they? Okay, as far as the fun packs, I have 3. Yeah, these bags were a little bit smaller. This is one fun pack separated into 2 bags. And then this is a fun pack, and this is one. So let's just look at what is in here. And I'm gonna try really my best to make this quick. There is a pouch that has a lot of keys in it. That is quite a few keys. And they're all different kinds. They're not necessarily really old antique keys, but there are some fun keys in here. And each one has the same amount. The pouch is gonna vary on every pack. So it's just gonna be at random which one you get. There are 3 pieces of fabric sample, upholstery samples. Each one has a quarter of a really pretty bandana or napkin that was made in India. And then each one has a sizable piece of this nice canvas fabric. I left these strings in place because you might want to use them. That's where the fabric was cut or torn. And then each one has one of these encyclopedias. And you can see they've got some wear. These have been around for about 60 years, a little bit longer than I have. Really fun old images. That one even has Hitler in it. He would be a page I would tear out and get rid of. And that's, oh, what is that? The imperial moth. Imperialism. So there's just a lot of fun things. There's going to be pretty maps, lots of cool pictures. You know that one of the ways I decided to tear pages out of mine was to leave the women in the book. And there are many more men in the history books than there are women. So that's a challenge. Oh, that's a fun page. Look at all these different images. And of course the terminology is going to be different. They're going to be just a different set of thoughts because of the time frame. So let's just go ahead and try to look kind of quickly. Of course, it's going to come to you in this bag. Each one has a file folder to hold everything. There's one of these cupcake liners that I used to make some flowers earlier. There is a clear pocket. And then we have just a variety of different kinds of forms. The guest check. You can see there's credit union forms in here. A couple of library cards. A few of these receipts. And then we have a couple of stickers that are book plates. A section of pages from a spelling type book. And then just a number of all kinds of postcards. And each pack is built exactly the same, but the items are going to be different simply because they're unique. A lot of these are vintage. So, and the ones that aren't vintage, they're sort of just one of a kind. Like that looks like an old sewing machine or something. Or some sort of old, I think it is a sewing machine. So lots of cards and postcards. And there's this one that opens up. I used that image in mine. And then we have playing cards. A few of those. And some play money. It's $1 million. And some pieces of paper from some pretty scrapbook paper. There's another card. There's a little piece of handmade paper, a little envelope, and more paper. There's a pretty little card with, that's really nice paper. A stack of these coin envelopes. You can use those to stamp on, to put things in, as tabs on pages. And then each one has a piece of this paper that has Frida Kahlo and a piece of the Valentine paper. Even though Valentine's Day is over, you might want to incorporate some of this, even cut the pieces out. And there's a piece of this beautiful paper. This is the, you know, the large flat wraps that you can get from Paper Source. And then some pieces of scrapbook paper. Each one has a map. Each one has a couple of these really pretty envelopes with the vineyard theme. And one of these vintage inserts from some tiny, really flat little 45 records that play different bird sounds. So this is just the paper part. And then quite a few pages of this vellum. You can turn this into envelopes. You can use it as book pages. And then a stack of this vintage paper that came out of a small 3-ring binder. So some of the pages are just plain and then some are lined. And I feel like that's, I don't know when that's from. It was one, I feel like it might be from the 70s because it came from one of those small notebooks that has the blue colored fabric on the outside. I don't know if you remember what those look like. I used to carry one in school. And then here are some nice envelopes. These have some pretty sort of mottled or speckled paper, and they're nice and heavy. There's another card. I think each one has one of these. I just liked the design on that. And then there are a few book pages from a book about early American art and collectibles. So that's fun. And then a stack of doilies. There are heart-shaped and then round ones. Whether you use these as book pages, that's up to you. I like to use mine as stencils as well. And that's a good way to get some decoration on your page with inks and, you know, acrylic paint, whatever, just stamp on the top of it or, you know, dab the paint on top and then you end up with that pretty design. So this is everything that's in the fun packs. Again, I have 3 of these. I'm gonna be really focusing on getting fun packs listed every week. And I hope to do a better job at that. I have had so much happening, and I always do. I always say that, but I always do. It's really true. I have a hard time just being still and not doing things all the time. I am volunteering more regularly at a place that I like to be able to help out at. I am working a few hours a week at a job. It's taken me a while to find something that fits in perfectly with my schedule because this is really my full-time job. My shop, my YouTube channels, the art, that is my true love since I have retired from my big girl job or whatever you want to call it. So I have 3 of these. I'm going to try to do better at getting these listed. There is a link where you can purchase these through PayPal if you would like to. Thank you so much for watching and for being here, being part of the birdsong community. We have the best people hanging out here. It's just wonderful. I love the community that we have. The Facebook page is growing a little bit. It's a slow growing thing. I don't push things. I'm just kind of low key, so it has grown slowly over time. Feel free to share your pictures in there. Ideas, things, if you have a shop and you want to share that, I'm completely fine with that. Thank you again, and I will be back really soon. Bye for now.